right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good
All
morning.
right. Look, we got our special friend with us this day. I am super excited. Gizmo, we kind of match my MPU logo. It's right there. It's matching.
Totally.
We're matching this morning. I'm so super excited to see that we're matching. Dr. Dani, good morning. I love this color
Good
on you.
morning. Thank you. How are you?
I am bubbly on this Monday morning. Now, I believe that it did not rain this weekend, but I do believe that it's going to rain on this morning
It's
because
raining
I
now.
see some rain clouds. Yeah. I was like, I see some rain clouds. They look very settled in. But I am hoping that Tonya has safe travels this morning. When she was talking about, we're going to talk about this next week, I totally missed that she was traveling to New York this week. Super excited for her, and I know she's gonna have lots of cool announcements when she gets back. So y'all listen, we're gonna have a good show on today. Now, I see some people are tuned in on YouTube. I see the hearts going. I'm looking on the live stream. So if you are connected this morning, go ahead and tag some people into the conversation. We got a good conversation today. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. Dr. Dani, if y'all didn't see the clips that are coming out from the show last week, it's amazing. We are back to close out season 2. And Dr. Dani, I've got to say before I start Jay's Corner, if you guys missed it last week, Dr. Dani spoke a word, but she also spoke a truth because she said that in May, a lot of us are broke. You may not want to admit it, but it's prom season, graduation season. It's a lot of holidays in May, and you start to feel that in those pockets. So let me just say that, Dr. Dani, you were on to something. Last week I was quiet because I was like, no, I got a few coins saved, but yes, I was proven otherwise. So
Well, then
I'm
we're gonna say this
yes,
week.
May is a great
rich.
month, but
You
there are
rich.
lots of graduations.
We're gonna speak it into
it's coming back. It's coming back. Look, I even got a money tree. I got a money tree from the CVS. It was on a good sale, right?
There you
go. I'm looking at the new growth at the top is starting to wilt just a little bit. I said that's okay because it's still full and it's growing. So that's what I'm experiencing right now in the month of May. But we'll just go with that. Now, again, guys, if you are tuned into this conversation, go ahead and share this with others because, baby, I'm ready to bring it this morning with Jay's Corner first, Dr. Dani. Jay's Corner first. Listen, guys, Dr. Dani, I want to start off with this. Celebrating Brown versus Board of Education. I wore my MPU jacket on purpose because there's a lot also happening in the month of May. Now, if you are unfamiliar with this, Brown versus Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas, racial segregation in America's public schools was found unconstitutional, although when we really look at our public school system in 2024 and we have school choice options that are being taken away from parents, hence Seven Pillars Career Academy in Clayton County. Clayton County has a particular area, Morrow, Georgia, that has the highest number of Black and brown kids who are disproportionately represented in school suspension and also in school suspension and also the school to prison pipeline. So when we think about the Brown versus Board of Education case in 2024, we still have educational options that are being closed for our children that are safe and non-suspension. And we can, yes, blame racism, but Clayton County has a Black superintendent? Right. Clayton County has a Black school board? Clayton County has majority Black school leaders? Okay, so Black people, I want us to wake up and have a really conscious conversation about, now we can blame the system all day long, but the system is now operated by us. And so what are we going to do differently for our children? Now, we just celebrated Teacher Appreciation Week, so please go ahead and, celebrate teachers and educators continually, but I also want to say this is Mental Health Month. And if you guys haven't seen some of the recent TikToks from teachers, it is wild to me that in this state of emergency we're in education, teachers have found time to, and this is not anything new, because there were teachers in maybe 10 years ago that I can speak to, see teachers that, yes, were very much allowing their students to unbraid their hair, do their hair, act like they're best friends. That situation has been going on for a while. But it's what we choose to make go viral that I want to really just caution us during Jay's Corner this morning. During Teacher Appreciation Week, 3 black brothers of all teachers, 3 black brothers that we represent now less than 2% of the teaching population in this nation, have gone viral from things that are not favorable for us. So in one sense, we have organizations like the Center for Black Educator Development, Literacy Lab, Profound Gentlemen, Messy Roots, and other organizations that are supporting male educators of color and really encouraging us to stay in classrooms, stay in schools, and make a difference in education. And then we have 3 brothers who have gone viral that have basically made people say, well, why do we need to have black men in classrooms if this is what they're doing? And so I just want to caution everybody during Jay's Corner to be mindful. What we tell young people, be mindful of how you use social media. Adults, I want to caution us. We need to be mindful of how we use social media, how we address each other in public, because young people are always watching us. And so we got to be honest. A lot of the things that we're seeing younger adults do, teenagers do, go back to some of those hissy fits that you had. Go back to some of those moments when your friends snapped in public and everybody thought it was cute to get somebody told and to read someone. Well, I might be kind of preaching to people who weren't doing those things, but if you have friends who were, all of our behaviors play a major role in this. And so education is my topic always, but there's a lot going on in the world of education. And I will also say that we have a lot of students that are graduating. This is college signing month. If you're a teacher, auntie, we got the rich aunties and uncles that listen to the show. We have parents. We have a lot of students graduating, but a lot of black and brown children are not being connected to community colleges, trade schools, HBCUs, other colleges and universities for higher education. Ask me how I know. I'm glad you did, because the National Parents Union has a partnership with the U.S. Department of Ed. And when we did our town hall, we now have had almost 55,000 people in the last week and a half view this town hall. Over 9,000 families have gotten connected, and there's still children who are being celebrated by these school districts on social media because everybody's dancing, right? Everybody's having a good time, but children are not being connected to funds that can help them get to schools. And this also applies to community colleges and trade schools. I'm going to say this again. Federal dollars, grants, scholarships also apply to community colleges and trade schools. June 30th is the deadline. Go to nationalparentsunion.org or follow me anywhere on social media. You'll see me posting the information. But let's do something to change the notion that we are celebrating some 70 years later Brown versus Board of Education, and our children are still not being taught in manners that drive them to economic and educational excellence, but it also is not providing them with the pathway to gain the knowledge they need to be successful in society and break generational poverty for families and communities. So that's Jay's Corner this morning. I had to bring the hard word early this morning because we are in a state of emergency. Everything is going up. Prison rates, death rates, but the success rates of our children collectively is not going up. If your family is successful, that's great. If you are successful, that's great. But if your larger community is in detrimental need, then baby, we are not great. And right now we are in a crisis. Black and brown families, Afro-Latino, Black, Latino. We are in a crisis. So let's wake up and do this work together. All right. Now, that was me preaching this morning because I already know that Dr. Dani is coming forth with the word. But as much good words as we hear on Sunday, on Wednesday, on the iWin morning show, if we're not doing something to better our further generations, God's not going to be pleased with us. That's me. That's my person. So tell your pastors they can come see me. But if we're not taking care of the least of them, which includes our seniors, I'll preach about that later. But if we're not taking care of our children and the future, then God is not pleased with you saying that, oh, baby, I spoke in front of thousands of people with your word. And I built this community center and this fancy church. And I got all these degrees. And I have a nice house. And yeah, but if you're not doing this for the least of them and our children, then baby, you wasted your time. But that's enough of me preaching. That's enough of me preaching. Dr. Dani, I know the people are ready for. Y'all already know what time it is. It is time for Dr. Dani to come on through with Dr. Dani Speaks. But that is it for Jay's Corner. Go ahead, Dr. Dani.
I want to come on through, but I want to respond to what you just said. All of the goodness.
Yes.
A couple of thoughts about that. I think that it always makes me wonder, why is there a Teacher Appreciation Week versus a Teacher Appreciation Month? And why is it at the end of the year when momentum is low, like halfway through the year? Like, there needs to be some changes about that. But I also wondered, like, can we specify, if we made Teacher Appreciation Month, can we specify, like, the folks that we're celebrating? There's such a deficit with, like, Black male educators, and like you had just mentioned, like the pressures of that. I mean, there really should be a day designated to, like, acknowledge and celebrate Black male educators, so on and so forth. I just think that there's so many ways that we can elevate and put people on a pedestal and to show the positives, reinforcing those things. Because you know what? When you are in the minority, you are already being scrutinized. Like, people are watching your every move. And I think that there just needs to be more opportunities of where we can celebrate our Black male educators. But yes, I believe, yes, that there's some things there. So thank you, Brother Jason.
Yeah.
I am ready for the affirmation. And I'm really excited about this because I think that this resonates with so many of us. Yes, Dr. Dani is speaking on failure this morning, Brute, because it is easy to feel like a failure. How many of y'all out there have ever felt like a failure? Hello, woo woo. Now, do you remember when people used to tell you failure is not an option? Yes, it is. Failure is an option. Absolutely is an option. And the more you tell yourself it's not an option, the more you're inclined to fail. So my affirmation today is, failure is an event. It is never a person. Failure is an event. It is never a person. So if you're feeling like you have failed and you have categorized yourself as a failure, you are not. Let's spin that around and say, in this moment, in this event, this failed, but I am not a failure. That is the affirmation for today. That is the affirmation for today.
Like, that is the affirmation for today. And I'm sitting up here sipping my tea like, failure is definitely an option because, and I get the good intention behind it. And, you know, just for some clarity, because I know some people are going to take that and run with it. Failure for our ancestors was not an option because they saw vision for us. And so a lot of times they would say failure is not an option because they had a different urgency behind them. Now, when we look at how our society is designed and the pressures that we're talking, this is Mental Health Awareness Month, so this all fits in.
Yes.
When we look at the pressures that we not only place on ourselves, but what society places on us, we don't even really get a chance to see our success and how impactful we are. So when a small mistake happens and it oftentimes turns into a failure, that failure can be so massive and so big on people of color because we've carried such a heavy load of, I need to be successful. I need to do this for my family. I need to do this for my village. that one fall feels like it's the end. So I can see that, but I also see the grace in what Dr. Dani has preached to us this morning, that failure is an option, because it reminds us that we are not Christ, that we are human, and that humans are imperfect, and that failure is okay, because God doesn't expect us to be perfect. God expects us to be who we are, unapologetically, not what we try to, a lot of times dress up ourselves to be. So, thinking about our mental health and what Dr. Dani said, please embrace that failure is not an option. I love what Dr. Raymond said in the comments, that failing is not falling down, it's staying down. And that is the difference. If you fall down, it's like, dang, I should have turned right, and you don't get back up and go right, then that was a failure to do so. Like, you had the opportunity. We also have to look at, in failure, there is grace, there is opportunity. And Dr. Dani preached us, and she didn't give us a long sermonette this morning, but she gave us a powerful word. And seriously, failure is an option, and we have to be able to teach our young people that it's okay to fail at something and get back up and try again. Or maybe you failed at something and said, you know what? I was trying to actually be a nurse, and I really learned that when I fell down in this work, I probably should be in dentistry school. So maybe I need to take, an exit and go there. Sometimes you get revelation in what you feel and experience. So let's continue that, y'all. That was powerful, Dr. Dani, and I really appreciate that. I really do.
Yes. All right. We fall down and we get up. Come on, somebody's quoting Donna McClurkin.
Yes, I love that song too, and it's so powerful. Listen, guys, we are 37 minutes into the hour this morning. I hope everybody is off to a great start. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, I, in Jay's Corner, mentioned how a lot of teachers are like, listen, we burned out. Dr. Dani has said it. It's the end of the year. A lot of teachers are burnt out. Now, I can only speak for myself, and I know a handful of teachers similar to me who were not burned out. Baby, if they said we got one more month of school, I would have been that teacher that said, okay, listen, y'all, this is what we're going to do. Because that's how I am. I love teaching. It's my gift. And so I'm like, y'all, listen, they said we got another month of school here. Miss Hattie McDaniel down the street, she needs a deck on her back porch because she likes to cook those fish fry sandwiches that we give out on Friday to all the kids when y'all go home. She needs a new deck. So we would be in her backyard 2 weeks, building the deck, learning from her, having all kind of lessons just about how we can build community. But see, that's me, because I would have the kids making a difference in their community so they can see real life, tangible things, right? We got to look at burnout differently. People look at burnout and say, oh my God, it's time for me to stop working. It's time for me to abort the mission. And everybody just kind of runs amok. And so thinking about Mental Health Awareness Month being in May, which is also the end of the school year, how do we help people really balance work life and vacation life? Because now it's getting ready to be summertime, and what I hear from a lot of people is, oh, I can't wait till the summer so we can go on vacation. If I can just make it 2 more weeks, if I can make it to June 1st, then I'm going to be okay. But in my mind, I'm also like, this is also a part of our self-care and our mental health. Like, we have mentally taken on that, oh, May is just a hard month. So if I could just make it to the end of May and make it to Memorial Day and get to vacation, then like I can have my sanity and I'm going to be all right. And then that gives me a lot of caution about how people are actually showing up in their everyday lives. So we're talking about mental health. How are people making it until they get to their vacation? And is that something that's almost kind of like, to me, Dr. Dani, and I want to see what you think, that's almost kind of like driving on E. And is it safe for us to be driving on E in our emotional, mental, psychological, spiritual lives? Like, is it safe for us to be driving on E and waiting until we get the vacation to fill back up? So I don't know. Dr. Dani, what do you think? And let us know in the comments, y'all.
I mean, I guess it's okay to drive on E if you feel like walking the rest of the way. You know, when you drive on E, that car's going to stop. Unless you're driving on a wing of a prayer, and that car is still going to stop. You ain't got no gas in it. So, I mean, look at yourself the same way. You're going to end up stuck somewhere, and it might not be where you want to be stuck. I'm just saying, y'all. So let's
That's
be
good.
mindful.
That almost made me spit my tea out, but that's really really good, Dr. Danny. Unless you plan on walking, which makes your journey a little bit harder depending on where you have to travel to. Driving on E is not sustainable, and I'm just being honest. Like, I have seen, and yes, it's Teacher Appreciation Month, so a lot of my examples are teachers, but even in daycare centers, even in everyday life, people in their everyday jobs don't have but this short of a fuse. If you don't say good morning loud enough and walk in an establishment, you might get snapped on. If somebody is not at the front counter, Lord have mercy, and not present to support the workers, even if you try to get help, they may snap on you for whatever reason. And so people's fuses are so short. We have such a short fuse in dealing with each other. I try to sporadically watch the news, but this month there have been so many. It's almost like it tripled this month. We're talking about May, and like people getting to the brink of vacation, but also people shooting each other because of small situations that could be diffused through critical thinking, or like through restorative practices, or like de-escalation skills. But it's like these things are shut off in May because we're on short fumes. We're on E, basically. So loving the comments as well. How are we balancing like getting to a time of vacation after working through what we feel like is the impossible? And I feel like a lot of people are like working through the impossible right now.
Well, I think that's the problem. I think there's a lack of balance. You work, X amount of months hard, nonstop, and then all of a sudden, bam, 3 months you have off. It's like, well, where is the balance in that? It's like, nothing wrong with the schedule as much as realizing if I have to wait for those 3 months to be free, I probably need to find a way to balance and integrate that mental break and vacation time into the other months. So when I think of balance, that's what comes to mind for me. It's like, don't wait until you're on E and you've got 3 months to just relax, because realistically in that 3 months, the first month is going to be you to decompress and to really like get yourself together, which means that the next month is maybe your vacation time. And then that month after that is you building up the momentum again to get ready for the next few months. So it's like, you really don't have 3 months off. Like when people say teachers have all this time off, no, you have days that you're not in the office, but you don't have time off. What is off? Because as far as I know, you're always on. Whether you're a teacher who's, got kids at home and a family, you're still on in some way doing. And real talk, a lot of these teachers are off from their regular job, but they're working their alternate job. So what is off?
That's good.
There's got to be more balance.
Danny, that is good. Mm-hmm. Parents don't get a day off. Preachers, even though they say they take Mondays off, you don't really get a day off. Like, to be honest, your work, if it's your life work, it's always going. And so you have to find ways to balance that. And when you enjoy what you do, that makes it easier. But I want to shift in this direction. And Dr. Dani, just go with me, because I know that you can add a lot to this in regards to the workplace. And a lot of times you could go in and have your music playing, or you could be online and be like in your atmosphere and have everything ready. But our leadership plays a major role in our production. And so I'm also thinking about leaders who are going through their own personal things. And I've lived this experience where I had a leader who was going through an abusive relationship at home, and she came in and took that out on everybody. I mean, it made us feel like we were incompetent. It made us feel like we were less than. It made us feel like we were workhorses, like we were continually trying to work and do more and trying to do something that would make her smile or like, accept what we were doing. And nothing was ever good enough, because at home she was dealing with something. I've worked under a supervisor who lost his wife and was grieving, and that impacted our ability to have a safe, stable work environment. So now I'm curious to hear from people who are working under leaders who may not be practicing self-care, that makes that time period, especially when we think about the spring months leading up to vacation time, it makes it even harder to work through those situations. So Dr. Dani, my big question is around how do we navigate the workspace with leadership, whether it's a supervisor, team manager, a executive director that we're under? How do we navigate working through self-care with leadership that does not value or practice self-care?
Well, if you can't find it in the house, you got to find it out the house. I feel like organizations that do not provide the type of support that their employees need, well, retention is going to be an issue, of course. But in the meantime, you've got to be in survival mode for yourself. And what type of support do schools offer that might not necessarily be related to leadership, but as much as self-care, mental health care? Like, do they have, opportunities with insurance where they can speak to someone that can help give them really good advice? Also, there's support groups, I know, for teachers externally, associations where there might be ways to find outlets and to network with other people who understand what you're going through, what those challenges are. And that might be what it could be your saving grace to sustain you in the meantime. I think that you're looking at a place as a toxic work environment. So networking would be pivotal to those who need to get out and to find their next place of employment. I also think that you keeping track and record of things that are happening with you in leadership, paper trails are really important, just to legitimize like whatever happens, what other health issues that you endure, because we have been told that health is a direct relationship to toxic work environments, issues with health. So keep track of that, especially when it comes to getting medical and expert health and attention and care. But I also think that if you have the opportunity, find those who are your allies in the workplace. And if you can't advocate for yourself directly to leadership, find those allies who can advocate on your behalf, whoever they might be. And yes, I agree. Like I was mentioning, like Marissa just said, affinity groups. That's what I mean by networking. Those are the groups and support groups that you need to connect yourself with.
That's good. That is really, really good. And, also there's this like amazing outlet on Mondays at 7:15 a.m. called the iWin Morning Show, where you can like share your thoughts and, be open about what you're experiencing so that we can also share that and help get resources to people who need them. And also like making sure that you maintain really good relationships with coworkers and people that you serve, because that does volumes as well. That's a part of networking. I have had people like reconnect with me recently and was like, oh my God, I worked with you when we were in APS and you were like such a great leader. And now I'm working with this organization and we can collaborate and, all these types of things. So people remember when you have a good spirit, they remember a good personality. They remember someone who was really intentional about, hey, I'm not feeling well in the office this morning. Hey, baby, don't worry about it. Let's make sure we dim the lights. I could take a few extra phone calls and you kind of, get your stuff together, or, working around that. And I think that it's also something we're missing in our society, which is just showing human compassion, humanity, being compassionate. Like, I'm always urging people to think about the things that we can do, especially when you are in systems that are not working for you and people who you serve. I think that, and I love Mauritz's comment that's on the screen in front of us, people remember authentic, real people. Like, and they also remember you in your best moments. Even though you may not always have your best moment, people remember you and how you carry yourself and how you act, and also how you give empathy to others. And so when we think about mental health awareness that connects to self-care, and we also have been talking about burnout throughout this conversation, we also have to have empathy for each other. Leaders, let me say this to you, and then I'm gonna come to Dr. Dani and see if she can give some tips to leaders who are in workspaces working with people. Being empathetic means seeing what policy says, but also knowing what's right for someone. Like, you have to be able to look beyond the policy. If the policy says, oh, you can't have your phone because we really don't even have an issue with you having your phone, but it's more of a control thing. If you have a parent that has an elderly, spouse or parent that they need their care, they may need their phone. That's empathy, being empathetic to people if they have a sick child. The stories that we hear from parents about how they have a sick child and it is the stress, like almost getting ready to have a heart attack, about, can I take off work? Can I have 10 minutes just to check in with the school? Like, what people have to sneak and go to the bathroom to be like, I just want to make sure my baby is okay. Do you have everything you need? That's crazy that people have to do that because we're not empathetic to human needs. So what I would say to leaders is show grace, be empathetic to your workers, and understand if you see them showing burnout, to do something that will help revive them and like encourage them, not like stifle them even more. That was my 2 cents.
So I wanted to quickly respond to a comment Ray had mentioned, pay more money. I don't think that that's a wrong thing, but I do think that unfortunately what COVID years have taught us is, you know what? My life is far more valuable than the money that you would ever pay me. Like, at this point, I know you don't care about me even if you throw money my way. And so unfortunately, yes, money is definitely an incentive, but it's not the end all be all for many people. And so to add to what you said, Jason,
True.
I think that whatever leadership decisions are made, it's about being consistent. If you are going to be consistent in rewarding people, giving incentives, then that's what matters. It's not just the one-off, let me go ahead and give you a bonus. It's throughout the year, what are some things that I can do to incentivize this so that others feel consistently that I care? I might not be able to do it all the time, but I'm consistently acknowledging. I'm consistently showing empathy. I'm consistently showing appreciation. Again, I go back to this one-off Teacher Appreciation Week. Well, consistently, how are we showing appreciation throughout the year? And it's not just about our teachers, right? Poor morale comes from the home too. When you've got parents who don't feel listened and valued and heard, then they bring that to the school. So your teachers are being the recipient of both leadership decisions, teacher influence, and students. And the students are oftentimes feeding off of what their parents are talking about at the home. So we have to, again, be consistent with communication, be consistent with just, as far as levels of resources and care that are being advertised to show support to our teachers throughout the year. Consistency is the word I really thrive off of.
And I'm thinking about nurses. I'm thinking about people who are like EMTs, like that same dynamic. You have supervisors, you have the workforce, and then you have the constituents that they're serving. And I think the overall message is, are we listening to the people's needs, and are we supporting the workforce that is taking the brunt of having to listen to leadership and what they're driving, but also having to deal with the people? And that can be challenging. And I'm also going to say this. I love Dr. Terrence's comment around a position of authority. A position of authority doesn't automatically make you a leader. And that is true, because we know that every superintendent, every executive director of a major corporation, every manager, every supervisor didn't deservingly get that position. A lot of times people are promoted because someone who is over them feels like they can maintain the status quo, or they're going to do everything by the book. If we say that we only want this amount of black people in, then best believe that there's somebody at the door counting to say, okay, I know we're letting 1,000 people in. We could let 2,000 people in, but if it's 1,000 extra black people, then we're going to continue to say that there's no room and no one can come in, because that's what this policy says. And that's what my supervisor hired me to do. Even though we can make more money, even though we could get more people in and they can have a great time to experience our concert, our event, whatever it is, this leader hired me to do this. And that's what I'm going to do, because we have people who are that. We have people who are going to follow the rules of their leader by any means necessary, and they're not going to question it if it is harmful to other people, because that's the type of leader they are, and we can't change that. We have other leaders who are like, hey, I see that there's a need here, and I'm going to make sure that the needs of the people are met, even if they're like, food cutoff stops at 12 noon, but we have 200 starving families, and this is going to take us over to 1:15. Well, we're going to go to 1:15 because I want to make sure that all of these families have what they need. So leadership is truly what makes a difference in the workforce, whether you are at Grady Hospital or you are at Midtown High School in Atlanta. So leadership plays a major role in our self-care in the workforce, and also we play a major role in our self-care in and out of the workforce. So it's the onus on both sides, Dr. Dani. I love how you highlighted that.
Well, I think the other thing too
it got quiet in the comments. Go ahead.
It did. They probably fell off.
I said the comments got quiet. We were preaching.
Yep, that's all right. If y'all, we still on here though. But I was gonna also say that it goes both ways too with leadership and those who are being led. That there's got to be a level of relationship building that happens, not just when things are going wrong, but there's got to be again consistency in communication. How often is leadership showing up when things aren't always going great? You know, it's always easy to want to show up in leadership when things are great and you're getting your acknowledgement and praise. But are you also showing up to rise to the occasion to have the tough conversations? And you got to do both. And I think it's the same thing with us. Like with businesses, do you talk to the managers in the spaces of the businesses in your community only when things are going bad and you have a complaint? Or are you also talking to your managers in those stores saying, you know what? Thank you. This is great. How are you? Introduce yourself. So I think you need to really be mindful of when you're communicating, how you're communicating. You know, I know it's hard as a leader. I know it's hard, but I also know that it's hard to work under leadership who appears to only show up when it's easy. So I think, again, be mindful of how you're communicating and be consistent with it. Good times, bad times, rough times. Just build the relationships.
Yeah. Interesting that you said that. Yesterday, we had an experience at the CVS in DeKalb County, and I, of course, I was like, oh, okay, baby, let me not say anything else because I know how to fix the situation. So there was a lady who was in the back at the pharmacy that came up as I was still checking out and, you know, just trying to bring my thoughts together after the situation that just happened. And she said, I really, really appreciate you, like, not going in on her, but also showing her some grace and correcting her, because she gave me more to the story about how it was Mother's Day and this Black woman had to work because her leadership and her system had failed her. Now, her attitude about it didn't come off the best way it could have to the customers. However, in getting that backstory and understanding that changed my way of how to deal with her. And I'm bringing this up because you brought up a good question about, do we praise the stores when they're doing good? And do we also have a relationship with them to say, hey, this is not going well? And someone coming up to me and saying, you know what, she's experiencing this and we really need more support from corporate. And it actually answered my own question that I was saying earlier, like, this store needs a facelift. Like, the carpet is dirty and they kind of like need new things, but the store is really heavily neglected. And so now my advocacy has changed from, oh, let me try to, let this Black woman know that the community got power and you're not going to talk to us any type of way, because that's not her everyday MO. But now it's changed to say, listen, you have employees here that really need support, and we need better infrastructure, resources, support for how to manage your front office when you only have one. Like, we need that type of support here for this store that the employees are also saying they need. And so how do we go beyond being in the moment of, again, having that short fuse? You talk to me in this way, and this happens a lot. If you're watching the news, this happens a lot in customer service. The person that is employed to provide service and then the customer, a lot of times there are rifts, and we don't give each other enough time to even muster up grace when we make a mistake, or if we go down a pathway that isn't the best representation of who we are. And so, Dr. Dani, I'm glad that you brought that up, because a lot of times we have short fuses, we go off. And now we have brought harm on both sides instead of being able to take a step back and allowing grace to happen. And we have to be able to give people grace, because thinking about burnout, we never know what the other person is experiencing on the other end. Now, I'm not saying that her words, and if you notice that I said in the beginning, her words, her actions were not the best, but that isn't the total reflection of who she is in the moment. And so I'm sharing this because I'm thinking about all the reports we've seen in the last 2 weeks about how people at fast food restaurants, they get their food and they're shooting the people. They didn't get what they wanted at the store, so they're shooting somebody. They didn't give me what I wanted when I was at the mall, so now you got shootouts at the mall because people's fuses, again, are so short. We're not showing each other grace. So just thinking about that and curious about how people, again, even if you don't get that vacation time or that time off, how are you managing self-care in the burnout season? And so that's what I'm curious, as we're in the 8 o'clock hour now, just to see for those who are tuned in and maybe have just chimed in, because I see the numbers are still going up. If you're just now tuning in, we're talking about burnout before we get to vacation, and how are you managing burnout?
So, making the connection, schools are businesses. Education is a business. I don't care. I know what people feel like it's. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It's a business, and you can tell because money really dictates who does what is done. And I think that what's so important is we have to treat schools like a business. We are the customers. They have customers. They have clients. And the customers are right. In schools, guess who's the customer? It's not just the teachers and the students, but it's also it's not just the parents and the students. It's also the teachers, right? Because they've got to have a little bit of buy-in too, to do quality work and to come back and to show back up and to sign those contracts to come back. So I think, again, looking at from a business standpoint, but let's take even a step further. When we're talking about treating ourselves like customers or treating ourselves like business, our bodies, our individuals, we are our business. This is about our business. I have to care about myself, and I need to figure out, okay, I can't treat my customers, my students, everybody else better than I treat myself, because it was said earlier, we have to be able to be poured into and to pour into others. So again, prioritize yourself, because you are about your business. You are your business. And if you yourself are not taking care of your needs, then you certainly can't show up and take care of the needs of others and work efficiently.
You know what? And Dr. Dani, I want to add this, like, listening skills are important. A lot of times we don't like criticism because we feel like, oh, you being critical and like you trying to knock my shine and all of those things. I get it, right? But we also have to be intentional about how we listen, because sometimes people can see things and say, hey, baby, listen, I know that you're doing it in this way, but I think this will really help you, like, not exert so much energy, and it may help lower that blood pressure, and it may like really help you like stabilize your nerves if you took another approach. Now, if I'm coming to you in this manner and I'm saying it to you in love, then I would be receptive of it. Now, we also have to be mindful of the person. Sometimes Big Mama's voice gets really loud when she gets passionate, or Popeye's voice may get, some more bass in it when he's like really serious about something. That doesn't mean that they're attacking you or that you are wrong. It just means that when people get excited, they show their emotions in different ways. Use discernment to see if people who are criticizing you or giving you feedback, if they're coming from a place of love or if they're coming from like a place of jealousy or like insecurity, because that happens a lot too. So be open to criticism in your workspace. And I also want to say, I know we celebrate parents because I know that was going to come up. I saw a comment around, we have like Teacher Appreciation Week. But when do we have Parent Appreciation Week? And actually, November is Family Engagement Month. But I also will be realistic and say this. If we were really intentional about education, then we would be teaching Black History 365. So when we come to February, it's like we're celebrating, this culture in a historical way, because this month started with Black History Day to Black History Week to, having a Black History Month and preserving that legacy and why we do it. But the legacy is really for us to be able to teach Black History 365 days. It's for the school year to be filled with Black history. Just like our indigenous history, it should not just be delegated to 1 month. And women's history in March should not be the only time that we're learning about females in mathematics, because if you missed our recent MPU town hall, I did some research and found out like, hey, Women in Mathematics Day is in May. We got a town hall coming up, and we just happen to be focusing in on financial literacy and math. We should take this opportunity to celebrate women who are mathematicians, because when do we ever really hear about this? But there are female mathematicians. So the point that I'm making is we have all of these different months that are celebrating people, but if we were really intentional about serving everyone, then these things will be embedded in what we do on an everyday basis, and it would not erase the need for celebrations, but it would really reinforce the awareness and the acknowledgement of people every day. Parents don't want to just be appreciated in November and you treated us like crap August through October 31st and you have our children. I'm just being honest. Like, you can't treat me any type of way and then say, hey, we're having a celebration for you and we want you to come on in and we want you to be here and show up in good numbers so we can kind of showcase to everybody, like, look at us and how we're engaging parents. And we were able to get our parents out. Dr. Dani preached about consistency. Like, we got to be consistent in our actions, y'all. And so when we think about all of these different things, are we being intentional and are we being consistent in our behaviors, in our end game in regards to how we're engaging people, whether it's people in the workforce, in our schools, in our communities? I'm going to go even down this lane, even how we're engaging people in our family, because a lot of times we're giving grace and all of these things to people in our workforce, and we're not showing that same grace to people in our village and in our family. So that's a whole nother conversation too.
Yeah. Good points. Good points.
I'm reading this point on here too. All about grace.
There's a whole lot
extending grace
here.
is really important. Yes. All right, listen, guys, it is 8:09, and before we get ready to close out, I know a couple of people have chimed in. So we're talking about workforce burnout during this great month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. We've talked about everything in education, in the workforce, how people are navigating through this. How are you balancing your self-care before you get to vacation? Share some things in the comments. Dr. Dani, I want to hear from you. How are you balancing maintaining your self-care right now? I'm going to give something too, and then we'll see if anybody gives us some comments before we close out.
I think I'm doing what the advice is I'm gonna share to other people to do, which is reverting back on the last time I took a break and how it made me feel, and what are little pieces of that I can integrate into my routines weekly and monthly, So if
Love
it's
it.
going to certain places, if I don't have the time or the funds to take a vacation, it might be identifying a restaurant that reminds me of the last place I was at that brought me that type of joy, and including that event into my life more often. And I'm doing that as I'm scheduling my life and scheduling the things I have to do related to work. I'm also scheduling that type of self care into my weekly routines as well. And I would encourage you, as you're planning your trips or thinking about the trips you had this year and how great they were, and you wish you could go back there. Why do you want to go back? What are the little pieces of that that you can replicate? Um, Locations here locally, a budget friendly, that you could say, you know what, I've got some time off I can take early on Friday, and I'm going to go to this spot because it reminded you of the joy that you had when you were having that long vacation. So that's kind of what I'm doing more of.
I love that, Dr. Danny. And I'm seeing people in the comments saying just like sitting down on the couch, watching your favorite
Yeah,
TV show or reading
yeah.
because we don't get enough rest. All right, so very quickly, guys, two things that I am doing to maintain self-care. You probably have already guessed what they are, but one of them is gardening. And yes, I do have an inside garden, so I have plants that are all around me. Literally, they are all around me. But like gardening and just, being intentional about sitting with the plants and meditating and just my hands in the dirt and just taking a break from, you know, everything that's happening in life and saving the world and all of those things, just being able to take a break from that. But also like my second little hobby and like what I love to do, and I talked about this last week, but I'm gonna talk about it forever now because boom, like
There you
taking
go.
a lot of the strategies that I have shared in my classroom, but also
Mhm.
just in sharing on the morning show, like pushing suit swag and success as everybody is having like concerns, but also talking about black boys in ways that are not like helpful. What are the strategies? What are the solutions that are helping us see change? And so I also tell my students and my former students now that are mentees, don't just talk about it, be about it. And so this book, Suit Swag and Success, is what I do in my spare time, like writing books, writing blogs to help share strategies with others. And Dr. Danny, I'm super excited because this evening we have our foundation board meeting. We're getting ready for 10 years of celebrating Lily's foundation, and I'm announcing to the board that my second book will be coming out for the 10-year anniversary. The name of that book, a major shout out to Lead Right. Lead Right, you can find them. Boom. They are the company I use to help me get my book off the ground and making sure that everything is situated. We're already working on book two, which is Nana's Joy, sharing stories from our lilies, and it will be dedicated to the foundation. And I'll be sharing um, experiences from my great grandmothers, my grandfather Poppy, and also those who were instrumental in my upbringing. And it's interesting because going back through journals, like y'all remember Moesha and the music would come on and she would be sitting there journaling like crazy. But I was a major journaler. And shout out to my middle school counselor, Mr. Davis was black male counselor in middle school. He was like, brother, you got a lot of anger. You need to journal. Get that
Mhm.
creativity out. And so I've been doing it ever since middle school. Major shout out to middle school, elementary, high school counselors, especially black men. I don't care what they say about black men. They're doing some phenomenal things. Those journals are now turning into my second book, Nana's Joy, where I reflect on lessons that I learned from my great grandparents coming of age and the significance of that. And so that's a little bit of my self care, being able to take those moments to reflect and also put good out into the world. And if I feel like I'm doing that, that keeps me going. So that's a little bit of what I'm doing to maintain self care and what's coming up next. You can make them, some people call them hobbies. So if you want to take your hobby and make it into your part time job or whatever that looks like, hey, but hobbies are something, right? Dr.
Yes.
Dani, this has been a great conversation this morning.
Yes.
I'm so excited about next week. I think we have a special guest, but y'all have to go and read the descriptions and see what we're talking about. But we will be back next week at 7:15 a.m. I would say bring a friend with you. It will be the day before. Let me make sure I'm covering up my information. Now, it will be a day before. You probably can't see this card that I'm holding up, but it'll be the day before Election Day. This is my voter registration card. If you did not get one in the mail, you should go online and check it out. But verify your information, y'all. This is a very important election season. Yes, as a black male, I'm advocating for this because there are judges that are going to be seated that are going to impact women and what women are allowed to do with their bodies. And so everybody talking about how black women are the most unprotected. Baby, you have a way to protect them by making sure that you are voting for people who are aligning with what the people need and not what the system is saying it wants for the people. So you got to be present and engaged civically to know what's going on. So as this is a month where we're celebrating women, whether it's mothers, whether it's caretakers, whether it's women in mathematics, let's also make sure that we're protecting and celebrating women by getting out to the polls and voting for, it could be a Republican that is going to do the right thing, because we work across both aisles over here. Now, I can't speak for everybody, but vote for people who are going to do the work for the people. Election Day is May 21st. Check your card. Check your card. That's all I'm going to say. That's my last announcement, Dr. Dani.
All right. Have a good week, everybody.
All right, y'all. We're out.
Thank
We'll see
you.
y'all next week. This is our iWin Morning Show.
Bye.